Hello, hello, everyone. Happy Motivational Monday. My name is Kira. I am your host, and I am so excited to be here with you on this lovely day. We are dropping into our third session of our Living Your Purpose series this month. And we have dived in. We started off with Alvaro in the beginning of the month, talking about how your purpose is wired within. So, the literal neuroscience of your brain, what your brain needs to live its purpose, what our brain's basic needs are in regards to connection and sourcing that purpose through ourselves. Last week, we talked with Julia about letting go of who you think you should be. And a lot of that was focused on being in the present, being mindful, being aware of what it simply means to be a human, and understanding our basic reason for being here might just be to experience living this life and to be here right now, not wishing for the future or sad over the past, but being here now. And it sounds relatively easy. But it's not necessarily easy, it's just simple. And this week, we're going to be talking with Priscilla all about before you find your purpose, find yourself. Now, I've given you all this definition every Monday of this month for purpose. Some of you are here for all of our sessions, and you can drop 111 in the chat if you are just one of our ride or dies. You're here, you love Motivational Monday, you love getting your energy started off on the right foot each Monday. Or maybe you drop 222 in the chat if you're like, you know what? I just pick and choose the conversations I want to listen to. And sometimes they call to me and sometimes they don't. We've got people all over the spectrum. So I am going to re-give this definition of purpose. And it's one of those, it really made me think. And I feel like the more that we can have these definitions, the more that we can understand these kind of abstract ideas, because living your purpose can be very abstract. And I feel like it's the reason why living your purpose is one of our most searched topics for guides with life guides, because like, how do I necessarily do that? So this is the etymology of purpose. So it's the deep foundational linguistic. How did this word even come to be? How do we break it up? What does it mean at its deepest roots? So means to set forth beforehand. And it's used in the word pure, which we know means without blemish. And then pose means to suggest or intend. So if we put those two together, to set forth beforehand and pose to suggest or intend, then what purpose actually means is the purest intention that we set forth beforehand. And before we really dive into the conversation, we've been talking about this. We're going on our third week. Have any of you had your own revelations in regards to your purpose? You can drop 333 in the chat if you're like, yeah, I'm getting a little clarity. Or if you really want to give us a detailed response, drop it in the chat. Are you looking at your life a little bit differently? Are you a little bit more present? What is that intention that you're setting forth beforehand? How are you truly showing up? And it's been really cool because as I've interviewed our guides, we found that your purpose really is more of a general feeling or a calling or a sense. And it's not always this very specific achievement or accolade, but at least in American culture, we see it as like this thing I need to accomplish or do or conquer. And maybe that's not what it is. So this month we're really flipping the script on that. So it can be how you live your life. It can be the why in which you live your life, or even it can be the who in which you live your life for or through or with. So it is a little bit more of that internal journey than that external quest, which is what you'll hear repeated over and over and over this month. So we've got Priscilla here. She is one of our amazing guides. You all have probably heard from her before. She's an intuitive business strategist. She is a leadership mentor, a spiritual guide, a published author, and honestly, the list goes on and on and on. I am going to drop her profile in the chat for you so you can get a feel for who she is and all the things that she brings to the table and maybe how she can support you. She empowers soul-driven leaders to identify their core values, navigate change with confidence, and create a filling life and career without sacrificing their well-being. So, Priscilla, we are so excited to have you. Thank you for joining today's Motivational Monday on living our purpose and specifically before you find your purpose, finding yourself. And I'm curious, how do you live your purpose on a daily basis?
I think we're going to talk. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. So glad, especially for the repeats, where I go real deep, and and I'm very honest. So, ask me the question again, Kira, because I already forgot it.
Oh, the joy of being human.
Oh,
How?
I remember.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect.
I think I want us to keep in mind today as we're talking about living a purpose and being purposeful. I think they go hand in hand, two different sides of the same coin. Because to me, purpose is about, you said about the definition, purest intention we set forth beforehand. So I think it's about intention, being aware. And that makes a huge difference in the day to day of who you're being and how you experience life. So I'm just going to keep it at that for now.
So beautiful. I can agree with a lot of that as well. I feel like if I even look at my purpose now, a lot of it is to just undo the conditioning, undo how I've been told that I should be. So a lot of it is like, oh, what question am I asking myself? Is this really me? What is my intent?
Yeah.
Is this like what I decided for myself, or is this what someone else decided for me? So I love that we're talking about purpose and being purposeful and living your purpose all in the same conversation because they're part of the same coin, but there are those nuances.
Mhm.
So how would you personally define purpose?
It's the way when you and I were talking about it, I would describe it as really honestly how you show up and how people experience you energetically, your essence, your way of being. And Maya Angelou said something, right? They may not remember what you say, but they remember how you made them feel. And I think there's that element, that quintessential quality or qualities that linger with someone in their memories. Because even if you do something for someone, that evokes an emotion, right? And a feeling. So to me, purpose is how you show up in a way that people get to experience the true you.
And I think it reminds me, I know that there are some people who give and show up and do pour into others, but it's also, I think, about honoring yourself as well. Because there are some people who do things for others with expectation, or maybe do it grudgingly. And it's like, okay, was that the purest intention that you could have set forth beforehand? Did you say yes to something that maybe you wanted to say no to, or that you didn't have time to? And I had an experience like that this weekend. I was camping on the lake. And someone needed their boat towed, and I'm always the helper. But I have an ear infection. I had multiple friends coming in. I was setting up camp. And I didn't realize until afterwards that I was like, oh, I didn't necessarily want to do that, but I didn't even sit with myself beforehand. I'm just like a yes person. I'm like, I'll help you. So it's giving me even my own insight of how could I have supported myself better? And did this person have other options? I wasn't the only option. I knew that this person had other options, but I didn't even consider that. I was like immediately yes to a stranger where it took an hour and a half out of my day. And I don't regret it, but it gives me my own insight into where are the places, Kira, that you say yes and that you do help people and you make people feel good, but maybe you end up lacking at the end as well. And this really is an internal journey where we have to be really clear with ourselves too. And it's such a delicate balance in how we navigate all of this.
It is a dance. It's not as black and white as we might want it to be.
So if someone was talking to you, maybe similar to my situation or different situations that you've talked to our members or other people that you coach, how do we start that conversation about being in a way that is authentic to us, allowing us to be in closer alignment with our purpose? Because a lot of what you and I talked about in the beginning of this conversation and prepping for this was the idea of be, do, have. And a lot of people are focused on the doing and the having. I'm going to do the thing and I'm going to have the stuff, but it's also who you're going to be in that process and getting really clear with yourself and then doing and then having. So, how do we go about being in that authentic way?
Yeah, well, purpose is conscious purpose is a it's a self-leadership practice. It's ongoing. Like you brush your teeth, it starts with deep awareness, and it really starts with a decision that how you show up, you take full ownership and responsibility of how that is impacting everyone around you. because we all have an energetic ripple effect, right? And when we're talking about purpose, we talked about an energetic frequency. We all know when somebody with a bad mood enters a space, right? Just kind of clunks. We also know when somebody has a levity to them and are like, oh, I want to be more around that person. And it's not about being happy all the time. It's just kind of gauging, where am I today? What do I need? How can I lead myself through limited capacity? Maybe a gray area, a non-easy situation, because life and life as we grow continues to present us with more and more nuanced situations, right? So this is about really ultimately underlying all of this, and you and I talked about this, is how am I leading myself for the highest good of all, right? And it all starts with you, you know, asking yourself, am I the right person to go help the guy? It starts with us, right? Because but we all do it, right? We're trained to go be the helper, do the right thing at our own expense, which then causes so much burnout, resentment, anger, and then that regurgitates in some other way afterwards, right? That just doesn't, that has to go somewhere, or you end up having road rage. It comes out in weird ways often. And so being really aware of, how am I leading myself? How do I take responsibility, and apologize if I, lost my cool, if I did something, or just said, you know what, even if somebody comes next time and says, I really would love to help you, but right now I really can't. I wish you the best. And being okay with staying in your own lane, because being purposeful means managing and really curating. It's not just a management, it's like curating your own energy. It's like a masterpiece. Like, what is feeding your energy so you can show up at your best, so you're nourished, and so that you can be the best version of yourself. And some days that means saying, look, I'm not okay. I just need to be by myself. That is a purposeful act of leadership. And that's you being on purpose because you're taking ownership of the energy that you're bringing forth. Because you do have an impact with every word, with every facial expression, with every body language, with every yes or no that you give. It has a ripple, from the smile to the grocery store cashier, like those are ripples. And so we can ignore that, but it doesn't mean that the effect of our actions goes away just because we don't want to look at them, right? So it's really about self-leadership through and through. And it's not an easy thing to look at, right? Because sometimes we just want to, I don't want to. But to be truly intentional and pure from the more pure version of ourselves means that that becomes a priority and something that becomes integrated into your life, really, I think.
It makes me think of the infinity sign and
Oh,
hearing you talk about the ripple effect that we have. Not only do we have a ripple effect on everyone else, that's one side of the infinity sign, we also have an internal ripple effect as well. So if you don't know your own truth, then exactly what you said, there are those ripples of anger and resentment and oh my gosh, why did I do that and why am I like that? Or if we're coming more into our truth, we get those internal ripples of being able to trust ourselves, being able to understand and discern, and also realize that we're on a learning journey too. Like, I'm not mad at myself for towing that guy, but I'm like, I'm one little Kira who's corralling a bunch of ladies and dogs. I didn't necessarily need to go do that, but I'm learning through my life. I have been such a giver and a pleaser, and I'm like, okay. How do I honor my best every day? And you mentioned doing your best. Our best changes every day,
every moment.
every moment. So we can't have this idealized image of what our best is and hold ourselves to what we think we're supposed to be. There's also the reality of where we actually are and the vulnerability of honoring and accepting where we truly are right now, which is sometimes a much harder part of the journey to sit with ourselves and be like, where am I? How much capacity do I truly have? Do I even have the capacity to give to myself, let alone to others? So yeah, it just reminds me of like the ripples internally and externally. I think often we think about how we impact others, but we don't often think about how we impact ourselves.
Yeah, and that speaks to being also aware, which can sometimes be tricky of our own defaults of like, if I need to take care of somebody and then like, oh, it's okay, I'll deal with myself later. Well, can you deal with yourself today? Maybe take a longer shower, before you actually sleep, maybe take a few deep breaths or do a little bit of stretching. Tending to ourselves first can is important, and it's also a journey of prioritizing it.
One of the things that you and I talked about also is that doing this inner work, finding ourselves, being more in our truth, coming into our honesty and our rawness and our realness, and being in full acceptance and doing this work of being, not necessarily doing, just being. Who am I? What am I here to do today? How do I desire to show up today? That work tends to make us more in tune with ourselves and more magnetic in the world versus a lot of us think finding our purpose is this search for something outside of us and we have to go and get it and we put all this energy out versus the conversation that we had was that if we become very in tune with ourselves and if we become very honest with where we're at and if we're doing this work, opportunities and the things that are for us tend to come to us with ease. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. Have you ever noticed on the days when you're having, didn't sleep well, you're just kind of cranky and then, it just kind of compounds, somebody cuts you off in traffic and then you miss a call or then you drop something like it just creates this cascade of like, what the hell moments versus the days when even if you did wake up late or you just take a pause, just instead of just reacting and letting that cascade of reactivity happen, you just pause and say, okay, hold on a minute. Okay, I'm feeling myself off center. I could either go down the reactive road or I can respond. I can take a pause. I can just feel myself in this moment, just back in my body, out of my head. Even just a few breathing moments of just pause, just pause. What am I feeling? What am I thinking? What's happening? Just feeling the sensations. And then, okay. Then comes the question, how do I want to show up for myself and others now? What's the best option here? And then we don't always do that, right? So, I yelled at somebody at the grocery store 2 days ago and I wasn't proud of it, but it just kind of happened. And she sort of deserved it, but that's another conversation. But the point is that I regretted it in that moment. I didn't feel good after. Sometimes it feels, for a second, it can feel good to fire off at somebody, but then you're like, oh, that's not my best. And I regretted it. But then after you've kind of taken that pause, you can then it's really about reclaiming your own power, right? Taking your power back versus letting life kind of take over, make you feel like it's taken over your life and your power, but that's not true. And then you can say, how am I going to show up now? And then that you have, and I find even just like, I live in California and so I drive a lot. And so just even just pausing at the traffic light, maybe just taking a moment, not trying to rush everywhere. I find that things actually move a lot more smoothly than me just trying to, cross over to this light and then cross over that one. And it's like creates chaotic energy. And from what I understand from quantum physics is that everything is a frequency, right? And like frequency attracts like. So it's just from just a scientific point of view. If you're an ass, you might attract more asses. If you're a little bit less of an ass, you might attract nicer people. And even if you don't, you're still more in your own energy. And then, because there is the element of, even if somebody shows you what they're experiencing in that moment, you can get to be more of your true self and not respond in like, right? And for me, that's really the goal. Because to me, purpose isn't just about the end goal, although some are really great. It is about the journey of becoming and the journey of evolution, evolving as a soul. And so the becoming is ongoing. So how are you growing and compounding on everything that you've learned, about yourself? And have grace in the process. And I also want to speak to, for example, I had a situation which you know about. I'm in New York now. I got a call. My mom needed my help. I did not plan that day on catching a red eye across the country to come help her. Part of me didn't want to do it, like the inconvenience. I had to redo my entire life. And, Sometimes it's not a perfect situation. My husband was already like, when are you coming back? And, um, but then it comes down to what matters most in the moment. What is your priority? And while the situation is scary and has a lot of unknowns, being here is important. Does it mean that it also affected me, my sleep schedule, my life, a whole bunch of things? Sure. And sometimes you have to make judgment calls in the moment of what's the biggest thing, what's the greatest priority. And that goes back to your values and checking in with yourself. And then what you said, trusting yourself. Is this the right choice? And I did discuss options with her. And it just seemed like I needed to come. And so then you make the best of it. And then you keep realigning and you keep adjusting yourself by asking the question, how do I show up for the highest good of all? And that includes yourself, right? I mean, sleeping better, stretching. I brought my foam roller, things that you can do to realign and stay true to yourself to the best of your ability in whatever situation you have. So that's my 2 cents.
So beautiful. And I think, this journey of inner inquiry is really important as well, because if we go back to the etymology of purpose, what's the purest intention? You're in a circumstance that was unexpected and it is affecting you. And still, the underlying question is, what is my purest intention? Yes, the circumstance isn't exactly what I wanted. No, I don't want my mother not to be doing well. No, I don't want to be traveling and not sleeping and rearranging my whole entire life. And yes, it's happening. And yes, I've made a very intentional choice to do all of this. So now that I've made this choice, what is the purest intention that I have in stepping forward in this? And then also,
Yes.
what is your capacity? So I think a lot of the times the conversation around purpose does get very like dreamlike and idealistic. And they just think that people think that it's like this big, huge thing, and it is, but so many of the big things in life are just these little micro moments that start setting you up for the larger things. So I would love it, Priscilla, if you could help take us through an exercise, maybe some reflections to help the people who are listening in on this conversation maybe start to do their own inner inquiry, have that level of connection with themselves and start doing some of this inner work.
Yeah, these are just some thinking points. Like one is like, what does purpose mean to you? And what does it feel like? For me, it feels like a warm, fuzzy hug that I give myself. It's a feeling of just feels right and just true. Because I know sometimes the mind can tell you what's right and wrong, but it just feels true. Um, and I think it's really important the micro moments, those moments of micro decisions where you could easily just go back to what's easy versus saying, I'm going to try to show up differently. Say the apology, take the pause. Don't run the red light. Maybe just say, you know what, my peace isn't worth yelling at somebody today, you know, and just it's not about not expressing yourself, but it's like, is it really worth it? What's more important here? What's the real important thing in this moment? And it's about how you're showing up. Who am I being right now? Am I proud of that? Is that the kind of person that will support my becoming and the version of myself that I want to be more of? Or is it going to take me to the kind of person I don't want to be as much of? Because when you take that level of ownership and leadership with yourself, people feel it. There's a level of presence and embodiment. Even just slowing down your speaking sometimes can get people to go, oh, it's just like breath of fresh air. And so you get to it's the reminder, right? That purest intention means that you remember 100% of what you can control and 100% of what is not yours to be in control of. So when you can stay in control of what you can do, it gives you a sense of power and purpose that helps you navigate anything while staying true to yourself.
So, what are some of the questions that you ask yourself on a daily basis to find your truth, find yourself in every moment, and come home to yourself? And hopefully, those who are listening can take note and maybe add one or two of these questions simply into their life and into their days.
Well, I mean, not all of us can easily kind of somatically feel into our bodies. Does it feel tense? Does it feel tight? But I feel into my body and I say, how am I feeling today? I take a gauge. I'm low energy. I might pissed off. Like, okay, so then the question becomes, what do I need right now? Right? Do I need a walk? Do I need a break instead of like jumping into something? Do I need to reboot? Have a conversation, just be still. What do I need right now? Pretty much to kind of show up in a better state. And then I asked myself, what are the core priorities for today to advance my goals in my life? And then how does that require me to show up today as? And if I'm still not in a good state, I either have to do something to shift my energy, go for a walk, do some weights, I don't know, do walk the dogs, just do something differently for a while. Or if it's really not a good day, then I just maybe do it another day. If I can't do it, if my brain just doesn't. And it's like a gauge. It's a constant gauging. Where am I? Who am I? Why am I doing this? I think that's important. And the why matters, you know, because it goes back to the intent and the intention. So where am I? Am I in the now? Am I in the past? Am I in the future? Am I kind of floating over my head? It feels like, who am I? Am I me? Am I an angry person right now? And why am I doing this? Is it because I just want to get it off my chest and get it off my list, but it's really not a good time to respond to that email, or talk to that person or write that proposal or, return the phone call? Like, because again, you're responsible for how you show up. And even if you have to show up, you can always give a person a bracket and caveat and say, you know what? I'm not having the best of days. So I just want you to know so that A, you don't misinterpret my responses, or you can just be aware that I'm not doing well today, you know?
I love these questions. I love the self-reflection. I think it's really important that we understand the simplest of ways that we can support ourselves. And as we're coming to a close, we have just another minute before I start closing us out. Do you have any final words for those who are here listening? And we do have someone who raised a hand. If you meant to raise a hand, you can drop a question in the chat and we would be more than happy to
I'd love to
answer
help
for you.
answer that. Yeah, don't forget the power that you have to make a positive impact in someone's life just by being kind or present. People don't need to be fixed, they need to be witnessed. And sometimes they want to be witnessed by you and with you, and sometimes you want to be witnessed by others. Don't minimize presence and purpose go hand in hand.
Mm. So beautiful. Thank you all so much for listening in on today's conversation. We hope that this left you with just an inner journey, an inner inquiry, and an inner question of, ooh, how do I find myself every day? How do I find myself in every moment? Have I found myself before? Where does X mark the spot in where I am and what I need and how I can show up best for myself first and then for others? A lot of us are mega givers, and sometimes it's time to receive for ourselves as well. So, we are still in the midst of our Living Our Purpose conversation. We have Priscilla as one of our guides with Life Guides. She is here to help you and support you on your journey. So, if you would like to schedule a call, dive a little bit deeper with her, do some of this deep work, I just dropped her Life Guides profile in the link. All of you who are on this call are partnered with Life Guides in some way through maybe a school you go to or an organization you work with, and you have free calls with our guides on any topic for any amount of time that you can start diving into these conversations. So we hope that you use it and we hope that you find a connection with Priscilla or some of our other guides. And next week's conversation, we'll be talking to Elizabeth about the people who shape who you become. You guys have not met Elizabeth yet. She is a new guide that we'll be working with this month. So I'm excited for you all to meet her. There's a survey that pops up at the end. Please fill it out. Let us know how today's session was. If you have recommendations or testimonials, we would love to hear them. And we hope you have an amazing Monday and that the rest of your week is purposeful and also full of presence. Thank you all so much for having us. We'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone.